Coming up next, Sitting at 30 takes you downtown for the weekly luncheon meeting of the City Club of Portland. Live weekly coverage of City Club is made possible in part by TCI and is produced through the facilities of Portland Cable Access. Now we join the City Club for this week's program.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the City Club and to the State of the Legislature address with Speaker of the House Lynn Snodgrass and Senate President Brady Adams. I'm Pete Heuser, President of the City Club. Broadcast of our programs this quarter is, as you know, brought possible as a result of corporate support from Providence Health Systems, Portland General Electric, and Wells Fargo Bank. Now, next week on February 5th, join us for the State of the Region address with Metro Executive Mike Burton. That'll be at the Hilton, so make sure you don't show up here. That's at the Hilton next week. Our board host today is Jay Formick. As you know, Jay is Executive Director of Oregon Heat. He'll ask the first question of our speakers, and then we'll open it up to City Club members in the audience. And please try to keep your questions short. I'm very happy to be able to introduce Lynn Snodgrass and Brady Adams for the first of what we hope will become a tradition of biennial State of the Legislature addresses by the Speaker of the House and the Senate President. I'm anxious to hear about their agenda. So far, there's been a surprising level of agreement between budgets proposed by the governor and Senator Adams. But after having lost 3 Senate seats to Democrats and with moderate Republicans ready to vote with the Democrats, Brady Adams realizes he's going to need to be responsive to Democratic wishes. In the House, Representative Snodgrass gained 3 Republican seats, and she's been given much of the credit for working with conservative candidates to get them elected. There was serious concern about her spending precious time on the conservative social agenda, but we've not seen that yet, and she's vowed to work for all Oregonians, not just a few. But it will be a challenge for Speaker Snodgrass to get everyone to work together. In the Senate, 19 of 30 senators have at least 3 legislative sessions behind them, but in the House, only 2 of the 60 representatives have had that much, and this is the first term for 25 representatives. This term, legislators will have to deal with school funding, transportation, juvenile crime, and many other important issues. 2 weeks ago, the new superintendent of Portland Public Schools, Ben Canada, said that unless additional funding is provided to Portland Public Schools, he will have to cut 8% from his budget. Virtually every state legislator declares when running for office that the number 1 priority is schools. But we still see that our schools are underfunded. We'll look for leadership from President Adams, who has vowed to properly fund our schools, and from Speaker Snodgrass, who cut her political teeth as a Damascus school board member fighting for increased school funding. Brady Adams will be first today. He was born in Portland and lived in Vanport until the Vanport flood washed away his home and all of his family's belongings. He graduated from Portland State and for the past 25 years has lived in Grants Pass. He worked his way up to president of Evergreen Federal Savings and Loan, one of the most successful financial institutes in the state. Senator Adams is serving his 2nd term as state senator. He was unanimously elected Senate president in 1997. We'll then hear from Speaker of the House Lynn Snodgrass. She graduated from Portland State, having financed her education in part as a result of winning the Miss Oregon title and the scholarships that went with that. During her first term in the House in 1995, critics said that she was too conservative to be a serious player in Salem. But she's worked very hard and has done a very good job of convincing her colleagues that she can be an effective leader. In 1997, she was elected Majority Leader and has recently been elected Speaker of the House. Because of term limits, this will be her only session as Speaker, and by most accounts, she's on track to make this a productive one. Please join me in welcoming Brady Adams and Lynn Snodgrass to the City Club of Portland.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today and to share with you I think not only our legislative agenda, but also what is important, our vision for Oregon. And I'd like to share today with you where that vision for me came from. And we mentioned today about Republicans and Democrats. Frankly, my vision for Oregon came from a Democrat. It came to me from a single mother who was abandoned by an alcoholic father and left with 4 children to raise as a waitress. And that Democrat was my mother. And she taught me 3 things about Oregon and about a vision for Oregon. She taught me about the power of individuals and the belief in people. She taught me about family, and she taught me about opportunity. And I'd like to share with you those thoughts before I talk to you about the specific of what we're going to be doing in the 99th session. I came from a very poor background. We lived in Vanport, and during the Vanport flood, we lost everything. Everything was completely gone. And I think you can understand how difficult it would be coming from that position and over the years having 4 children and trying to raise those 4 children while working as a waitress. Times were tough. But my mother said to me and reminded me continually, I'm not a victim, that I was born with certain skills and certain abilities, and that I should have confidence in those abilities and take responsibility for myself to solve problems. And that's a cornerstone, I believe, that is an Oregon belief. Oregon believes in the individual. It believes in the power of people. That is what this state has been built upon. It's been the collective efforts of each of us and our relatives and our families and our ancestors that have got us to the point where we are today. And that is the cornerstone that Oregon will continue to be built on, the power of people. But my mother also knew that as powerful as I could be with the abilities that I had, that sometimes things got beyond the ability of an individual to solve problems. And she taught me the power of family. I come from a fairly big family. I got 3 brothers. I had a grandmother. I had 8 aunts and uncles. And I had just dozens and dozens of cousins. And if you looked at each of us were different. We're still different today. We have different strengths, different weaknesses. Each of us is an individual. And we celebrated those strengths, the strengths of our diversity, when there was crisis. Because I can tell you something that I did know in common with all of my relatives is that when there was a problem, when there was a crisis, the family would come together. Oregon is the same thing. Oregon is a family. We're not all alike. We're not clones of each other. Some of us live in large cities. Some of us, like me, live in small towns. We build our houses in the deserts. We build them on the mountains and on the coasts. We're farmers. We're business people. We're teachers. We're 1,000 different occupations. But what we also are, we're all Oregonian. And we know how to come together as a family and to solve problems when we need to do that. Whether it's problems in regards to education, the environment, or any of the things that Oregon has a reputation rightly deserved of being a leader in providing solutions. And that's a foundation, again, that I believe will carry us into the next century. And finally is the issue of opportunity. From somebody who comes from a background of poverty, I can say to you this is a state of opportunity. If you apply yourself, if you believe in yourself, if you work hard, Oregon doesn't care if you are poor. Oregon cares about your individual abilities and will give you the opportunity to do what you can with those. And that is really what the vision of Oregon is about. It's about you and I as individuals, about us as a family, and about the opportunities that we will provide into the future for those that follow after us. Now, we're going to face some really tough issues as we come into the 1999 session. Let me talk just about a few of those, if I can, with you. The most important issue that we will have is the issue of education. It's an issue that continually is before the legislature and will in the future continue to be before us. Let me talk specifically about K through 12. You have to have responsible funding if you're going to have a successful K through 12 program. The budget that the Senate has prepared will provide historic amounts. It will literally provide at this point in time the highest amounts of anybody that is proposing well, other than last week, funds for K through 12. But I would hope that you would not measure my commitment and my colleagues' commitment on education simply by our willingness to write a large check. I think that's what we've done in the past. You look at me and you say, how can you say you're committed to education if you won't sign the largest check for education? I'm willing to do that today. There is no elected official that has a higher proposal for K through 12 financing than what the Senate budget is. But let me tell you what I also want besides responsible funding. I want accountability and I want results. So when you look at the budget that we brought forward, it is a budget that doesn't just talk about the numbers, about the monies that we're spending. It talks about developing a successful school program. Let me tell you about one of those elements. I want us to go through the state and find super teachers. Let's find teachers on K through 12 that are doing outstanding things in their classroom. Let's reward those teachers by additional resources to those classrooms, but more importantly, let's find out what it is they're doing. Let's find out what their best practices are. Let's capture those best practices, and let's export that to all of the teachers within the state. So that, yes, we will have resources to help that teacher do the job that they need to do, but we will also help other teachers learn about new and different ways of doing things. We have to get to that step in addition to the step about financing itself. And let's remember that education is a continuum. It does us no good to have a strong K through 12 system if we don't have a strong community college system and a strong higher education system. I come to you today with pride of having been the first person in my family to have graduated from high school. But frankly, in my mother's day, when she was unable to do that, she could get away with it. And there were consequences, but they weren't the type of economic consequences today that you would have. You can't. Your probability of success today if you don't have a K through 12 education is almost non-existent. But in the future, it won't just be the K through 12. You are going to have some additional learning opportunities, whether through the community colleges or higher ed. And higher ed is at a crossroads. We use that word too frequently, but it adequately describes the situation that we have today. They are willing to do something that has never been done in Oregon's history together. They're willing to take risk. They're willing to take risk by going to a new funding model that says we will operate in a market environment by allowing the funds to follow the student, because we believe that will lead to a better quality education. That again takes resources. And again, in the budget that we have brought forward, we've provided $40 million, $80 million total for that transition than any other proposal that is before the legislature at this point in time. We need to do that. We need to do that not for higher education. We need to do that for those children that we're bringing through the K through 12 so that they will have the same opportunity that I had to be competitive in a marketplace that is becoming extremely difficult to remain competitive in. Let me talk a little bit about the environment. I live in Grants Pass, Oregon. And if you want to know how things shouldn't be done, come on down to my community. Each of us has a story to tell as an individual Oregonian. I can tell you the story of what it's like to be a banker in a small town. But I can also tell you what it's like to see my neighbor lose their job, to lose the ability to be able to provide for their family when for generations and generations they have had that ability. I can tell you about how that feels, not just to lose your income, but to lose some of the things that we take for granted when you have a job, like health insurance. But I can also tell you about a community that knows how to come together when it addresses those types of issues to provide solutions. And you in the Portland area are going to be facing extreme challenges with the listing of the endangered species in the rivers. We need to learn from each other. I can tell you what to do and what not to do. So you won't have that same experience of having to look down your street and seeing 1 out of every 10 homes have somebody be out of a job. You won't have to do what I did, and that's help start a nonprofit medical clinic because you were tired of seeing kids not be able to get health insurance and tired of seeing proud people have to go on welfare in order to survive. We have to have respect for the place that we call Oregon. No one will deny that. But we also have to have respect for the people that we call Oregonians. The legislature has a key role in helping shape that. We have to have a strong economy. And a strong economy demands a strong transportation system. And the legislature understands that priority and will address that issue. But in addressing the issue again, I would suggest it is not just a matter of resources. It is a matter of how effectively and efficiently those resources are being used. Because your tax dollars are scarce, whether they're gas tax dollars or whether they're income tax dollars or any other tax dollars that you pay, you have a right and are increasingly demanding that we show you that we're using those funds appropriately before we ask for more money. And when it comes to transportation, that has to be a key part of the equation. And speaking of taxes, we have to address the issue of working families in Oregon. In 1997, I brought forward with my colleagues an earned income tax credit for low-income families in Oregon and additional credit for child care. We didn't do enough. We can do better. We need to do better in 1999. We need to do better because these are the people that are saying, I don't want to be on welfare. I don't want to have to ask you for a handout. I want to ask you for help, but I want to be able to help myself. And we have the ability to be able to do that with all of the other challenges that are before us. So I proposed in our budget that we brought forward as part of our tax fairness package an increase in child credit for low-income families, an increase in the earned income tax credit, so that we can tell these people, we will help you if you will help yourself. We can do that in 1999. Those things get back to the point of what is the vision for Oregon. The vision for Oregon is a place where we will believe in the power of each of us. The power of us to take responsibility for us, to take our abilities and to do for ourselves and our family. We need to recognize that Oregon is a family. Your situation, your strengths and your weaknesses are not the same as mine. When I come to Portland, it's a different situation than when I go home tonight into Grants Pass. But we're still a family. The same way one of my brothers lives in Salem. One of my brothers lives in McMinnville. We're still a family, even though we're geographically separated, even though we have different issues that are before us. As we look at the solutions, we have to remember that we're a family. And finally, I think most importantly, we have to remember that Oregon is a place of opportunity. It's a place where it says you can do and be what you want to be. All we have to do is to believe in ourselves, believe in being a family, and we will have the ability to continue the opportunities and provide solutions. I look forward to working with you in the 1999 session, and thank you very much.
Brady Adams is a great man and a great leader. And I appreciate the words that he said. Another great man and a great leader is John F. Kennedy. A very famous line of his is, "Ich bin ein Portlander." I must have said it well enough for you to understand, and I appreciate that. I hope that what I just said is, you're like me. We are all Portlanders. I reside just 18 minutes from here. Actually, that's when there isn't any traffic in my way, and I do speed just a little bit. But it's real close to 18 minutes from here. My point is, I'm a resident of Damascus, and I'm not exactly downtown Portland, but I am from the Portland area. You're like me. I finished my formal education right here in Portland State, a great city, a great college. Our family business, Drake 7Ds, has contributed to the Portland economy for years and years and years. You probably remember it from when you were growing up. My family shops here. We do our entertainment here. We partake in the arts here. In fact, not only just in Portland, but in the Portland metropolitan area. My husband was one of the originators of the Mounted Jazz Festival. Portland is in my blood. Where we reside is important to our political identity. Perhaps with good reason, Portlanders have felt a little left out in the decision-making process down in Salem. It isn't wasted on me that the last time someone from Portland was Speaker of the House was 10 years ago. And president of the Senate, I believe it's been all the way back in the 70s when John Burns was there. So if we agree that we have a common interest in Portland, then we might also agree that indeed we are living in difficult political times. With the financial limits that are always upon us, how can we make our city, our state, better for our citizens? The good news is that we, you and me, have an agreement not just that we have priorities, but what our number one priority is. Brady already mentioned that. It's education. I am a parent. I have 2 daughters. They're grown, but I still call them daughters. I'm a former school board member and an elementary school teacher. So it should come as no surprise to you that I put education first. This is not campaign rhetoric. This is blood. It's in my blood. And that's why I issued on the very first day of session the Spring Break Challenge, a goal of having the legislature and the governor agree on school funding that's both responsible and at an appropriate level by spring vacation. Making the state's commitment early in the session means that schools can do the necessary planning in time for it to really count. I am acutely aware of the heavy financial cloud on Portland, on our largest school district in the state. But we in Portland need to know that if we're to understand the state's attempted solutions, that many of the school districts in the rest of the state are too under a heavy cloud. Despite the legislature's good efforts in the recent session, rural schools like Little Elgin struggle just to keep the doors open. I challenged some folks yesterday, I challenged some folks last week, go to Elgin, spend a week. Imagine what it would be like if your child's school door closed. Not your neighborhood school door closed, your school door closed. Imagine what it would be like to put them on a bus to ride hours and hours and hours to a local school. Or challenge you to homeschool. That is another alternative. But the point is, they too are under a financial cloud. Believe me, when it comes to money concerns, we're definitely one Oregon. All that being said, let me assure you that this legislature knows that our state depends not just on what happens within the 4 walls of the Capitol, but on the decisions that are made within the 4 walls of Oregon school buildings. When we talk about education funding, it has a tendency to be a gloom and doom scenario and conversation. But I believe that we have right here in Portland a very bright spot on that horizon, and that's the hiring of Ben Canada as Portland Public School Superintendent. As pointed out in a recent editorial in the Oregonian newspaper, and I quote, Ben Canada laid out a clear-eyed plan to improve Portland Public Schools, end quote. Mr. Canada understands what some of his predecessors unfortunately did not, and that's the importance of showing the legislature that the school district's commitment is to tax thrift. One of Canada's thrifty moves recently proposed that the City of Portland assume command of the district's police force, and that's expected to save the district $238,000 a year. 1,000 here, 1,000 there, and pretty soon we're talking about real money. Now, I'm not here to discuss or determine whether that program is good or bad. The point is, he's making the moves. He's trying. He's attempting to move in that direction. And what much of Mr. Canada is doing is essentially out of sight to you and I. Reorganizing the structure of the district, for instance. Cutting top administration in half. Putting a ban on social promotion, an idea, I might add, that the entire state should look to. Reconfiguring and consolidating some underutilized schools, putting school administrators back in the classroom at least 1 day a month, being open to charter schools. These efforts may be out of sight to many, but they're not out of mind to this very impressed lawmaker. I understand that under the governor's proposed budget, schools in Portland face a potential $55 million shortfall over the next 2 years, and this is a challenge. I understand the challenge, and we need to solve the challenge together. First, with the kind of economies that we have already seen proposed by Superintendent Canada. They're good, they're a good start, and I would encourage the school board to move in that direction and to help and encourage them to find more. But second, to realize that any solution to Portland's problems must be both long-term and include all of Oregon. I'm going to take you for just a quick trip, 18 minutes away from here. We're going to drive to my legislative district. And all we're going to do is look at the school districts that are within my legislative district. Gresham Barlow, Centennial, David Douglas, North Clackamas, Oregon City, Estacada, Sandy, and Oregon Trail. Pretty diverse group, don't you believe? Don't you agree? But I didn't say Portland. I am going to take the opportunity in February to participate in an educational town hall at Jefferson High School. I want to get down to what's really important in Portland. I want to understand Portland's perspective. And picking up on Mr. Canada's idea to return to the classroom, I'm going to take advantage of participating in a classroom in a grade school and in a middle school there. And my hosts, in fact, two of my hosts are here today, and I'd like two of them to stand up. Randall Edwards, Representative Randall Edwards, would you please stand up? And Representative Deborah Kafori, would you please stand up also? Oh, I thought she was here. Okay. Are there any other legislators here right now? Well, I want to take just a quick minute to thank Randall Edwards for skipping out on session today. No, actually, he covered his bases. He did this committee work early. But I want to congratulate him and many of his peers for the the good problem-solving approach, a cooperative nature that he has displayed, as with many of the members in the House. And Randall, I do appreciate that very much. As a leader in this state's process, I would truly be remiss if I didn't offer you some helpful advice. You haven't heard advice from a politician for a while, so I'm going to give you some. And that is how to deal more effectively with the legislature. After all, we know that Oregon is a very large geographical state, and it's no wonder that we have this notion that there are two Oregons. Actually, you know that what I'm getting at, and it's the idea that anything east of Bend is nowhere, and that's not true. We know that that is not true, because you will have to agree that Tye Valley and Fossil, Gold Beach, Lakeview, they are somewhere in Oregon, and they are populated by somebodies in Oregon. What's more, these places aren't nearly as remote as some might make them out to be, especially when the legislature is in session. All these places are represented by legislators, people who have control of the red buttons and the green buttons on their desk. The same lawmakers who will be making decisions that deal with Portland. So what to do to help eradicate this two Oregon notion? Just looking out at how many people are here today, I think I have an idea. It's not hard to get the idea that the Portland City Club has more members right here than there are residents in some of our Oregon communities. So let's consider this approach in extending a Portland open hand and hand of goodwill beyond our city limits. And here's my advice. There are 27 new members in the House of Representatives this session. That's just 3 shy of half of the entire House being brand new. So why not use this club's membership to extend a friendly hand to some of your fellow Oregonians? Surely there are 27 members of City Club who could participate in an Adopt a Freshman lawmaker program. Now you laugh, but you're going to want something at some point in time. Go down to Salem. Extend a friendly hand. Knock on the door of a freshman. Tell them who you are. Find out who they are. Introduce yourself. Make friends. And who knows, maybe by you becoming acquainted with some of the new legislators, the City of Portland and Portland Public School District might be pleasantly surprised by the support that they get from the rest of Oregon when the state's budgets are parceled out. But please remember that to be a friend, you need to listen as well as speak. Okay, it's an offer that doesn't have any guarantees, but at a minimum it is a start. And it might prove that when it comes to educating our children, we're all just citizens of one Oregon with the same best interests at heart. As I said, education is my top priority. It's in my blood, but there are many other tasks, many that Brady already referred to, before the legislature. Some of those tasks that come to mind include achieving accountability with the Oregon Department of Transportation so that we can wisely meet the needs of our transportation system. Other top contenders would be the protection of our reputation as balanced stewards of our natural resources by protecting our urban waterways, and giving real attention to a tax cut to working Oregonians and their families. All of these issues are very complex. All of these are going to take ingenuity and faith and trust, and we need to come there equipped. True story. There's a town in Midwest, a small community that was in a severe drought, very severe drought. Days and days and days. This farm community was without rain. Many of the members of the community came to the local pastor and said, "We need to pray for rain. You need to get everybody together and start praying for rain." He looked at him a little, well, okay. So he did just that. He gathered the entire community together to one farmer's farm. He stood on top of the tractor and he looked out at all of them and he said, "Well, do you believe that if we pray for rain, it'll rain?" And they all kind of nodded their heads. And he said, Do you believe that if we pray for rain, then it will rain?" And they said, "Well, yes." Finally, he just screamed as loud as he could, "Do you believe that if we pray for rain, that it will really rain?" And they responded, "Yes, we will." He said, "Then where are your umbrellas?" The point I'm trying to make is that we have members there that have the enthusiasm, they have the ingenuity, they have the trust, and they have come equipped. You too need to participate in that. You need to help in that. There are many top jobs that are on my speakers list of what we need to take care of, and these goals and many others can be achieved this session if we lawmakers behave in a civilized manner, and that is, first and foremost, with respect. Respect to each other, respect of Republican to Democrat, respect of House to Senate, respect of the governor, respect like you give each and every one of yourselves right here in this room, but most of all, respect to the people of Oregon. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Speaker Snodgrass. Thank you, President Adams. It is gratifying to see leaders of your caliber working on our behalf in Salem. As often happens, the question I had prepared got answered in the course of your addresses, so on the fly, I'm going to throw another question at you. And I'd like to make reference to the ballot measure that proposed to use gambling funds collected from the state lottery to fund parks and watershed reclamation. That passed in the state of Oregon. And this body debated whether or not to support that measure or oppose the measure. It chose to support the measure. During the course of that debate, I stood up and I invoked the names of Speaker Lynn, it was another Lynn, and President Brady Adams, and the governor of the state to show us where the leadership should be on the issue of using lottery funds. My reasons for opposing that ballot measure I will keep to myself, but it did call into question after that measure passed, have we lost the battle with our reliance and dependence on lottery funds? Is this a battle worth fighting anymore? When I read in the newspaper that there are several bills already in the House to cut taxes, it leads me to wonder if we are ever going to be able to mitigate the consequences of gambling in the state of Oregon. Now, leaders such as yourselves have the charisma and the capacity to lead Oregon out of a gambling morass, as I see it. I'd like you to address that issue if you could.
Okay. Let me answer that very directly. Yes, we are addicted to gambling, not necessarily just as individuals, but as a state. And that is not a healthy situation to be in. And I say it's not healthy, not just from a moral standpoint of whether you should gamble or not gamble. That's a decision you can make individually for yourself. I say it just as a banker. Gambling is a very competitive business. Its cash flows are not very stable. They're subject to changes. Take a look at pre-Indian casinos and post-Indian casinos, and you'll see a dramatic change in the amount of volatility in regards to state funds. So just from a banker's standpoint, it's not a good thing to be addicted to unstable sources of funds. How do you get out of that? Tough to do. When you send in your tax dollars, it used to go into a income tax pot, and then we used to collect the lottery dollars, and when we first started lottery, it was specifically, most people don't realize this or remember it, it was dedicated to economic development. It was not dedicated to education. It was not dedicated to prisons. It wasn't dedicated to salmon. It wasn't dedicated to parks. It was economic development. Over the years, we have blurred that so much, and we've all had the opportunity to do that through the ballot box. It all now goes into the same bucket. So when you lose a lottery dollar, you lose a dollar that you spend on programs and services. To think that you're going to be able to do that in one fell swoop to the $500 or plus million that lottery brings into the state is not only politically unrealistic, it is just not possible from a service standpoint. That doesn't lead me, though, to the conclusion that you can't do something. You've got to take yourself off of the gambling bandwagon in stages. Some of the members have suggested the formation of a savings account or stabilization fund with the idea that over time we would divert lottery dollars to that, and over time we would ratchet down our spending of those lottery dollars. And I would suggest that is at least a good place to start. If we would take some of those funds and set them across into some other place than current spending, and then each biennium reduce the amount of spending on lottery dollars by 10, 15%, whatever the environment would provide for us, at least we could head in that direction.
Brady made an excellent point. I have a little different perspective on it. I do believe that the lottery dollars are leveling off, and in large part because of the competition with the Indian casinos. And we can't do much with the Indian casino aspect. But as we become more and more dependent upon to balance our budget, to deal with the state parks, et cetera, as we become more and more dependent on the parks or on the lottery issue, we will continue that need, that increased need, which will then require us, if we chose to go in that direction, to increase advertising, increase choices of gambling, increase river gambling, etc. So we do have to make a philosophical decision whether we want to continue down that path or not. And if we're not going to, if we choose not to do that, it will take a series of years and years and years to weed yourself off of that aspect, off of that funding source. But we have to understand that it'll be very typical to what's happening with the cigarette tax. The cigarette tax right now helps fund the Oregon Health Plan. Well, we spend a tremendous amount of money this last 24 months telling people that smoking is bad. So they followed our advice and decided not to smoke so much. So guess what? There's fewer dollars coming in to spend on the Oregon Health Plan. So it's a vicious cycle, and it's one that term limited members are just going to be able to start dealing with. It's a long process. We've got to this the position that we're in right now over a series of years, and it's going to take a series of years to get us back out.
Charlie Davis, member of the City Club. Senate Bill 142, I believe it is, now before the legislature, would deregulate U.S. West, a telephone monopoly serving most of the state. Now, that would result in an immediate loss of $400 million refund to the ratepayers of U.S. West, as well as obscene future profits by a monopoly that is not regulated. I wonder if you can tell me what the position of the Republican caucuses are, both the House and the Senate, on this bill.
I'd like to take that. It is a Senate bill, and actually it's a companion bill. 142 and 143 are companion bills. They are in the Senate. I'm not sure they've been heard yet. We are anxiously awaiting them on the House side. I don't know what the caucus positions are. I don't know what the Republican position is. It's the beginning of the dialogue. But let me tell you what I hope the end result is, and that's that we get fiber optics to circle Oregon, so that we have opportunities, education and business opportunities in other parts of Oregon. And that is in part what the bills are talking about. I don't know what the end result of that bill is going to be. This is the beginning conversation of that. And yes, it does. If it did not change one word, it would do just exactly as you said. But because this is a legislative process, and it goes through the committee work both in the House and the Senate, I don't expect it to be exactly as it is today when it gets done. But my hope is that we do have that fiber optic opportunity, and that is one way to get that done.
Quick comment. That isn't a caucus position, and sometimes that gets confused when you have a majority party controlling the legislature. Those types of bills sometimes, because they come out of the committees that we appoint the chairs to, get this broad stroke, well, that's a caucus position. There are very few caucus positions. Most of them deal with education. Most of them deal with other forms of economic development. But that doesn't happen to be on. What you have is you have a democratic process. Democratic process allows members to bring those types of issues forward. There is two parts of that equation. One is the rate increase, but the other half the equation, at least I've heard from my colleagues, and the person on the Senate who has the most interest in this is Senator Dave Nelson, is the issue of the fiber optics or the fiber access in the rural areas. This is a good point, and I'm going to take just an extra second on this if I can. Oregon's form of government is a citizen form of government. It's not just me and Lynn that got elected as legislators from our constituents, but it's you, and it's everybody else in this room. And what our system is great about is it allows for participation. It allows for this type of interchange. It allows for you to help shape the policy if you've got concerns about what's happening. And that's what the role is of a citizen form of government, not the legislators themselves, but the role that you play. I'm going to vote this next time on I don't know, probably 1,000 different issues. I used to think I was pretty smart before I got involved in this business. I'm not bad on single-family lending. I actually am not bad on loaning on post offices for some weird reason. But unfortunately, the majority of the bills that come before me don't have to do with single-family lending or post offices. They have to do with things like rates on telecommunication and fiber optics. And for a person who's not even hooked up to the internet yet, it gets a little confusing. I need your help. You know what the most sickening feeling is if you're on the floor of the Senate? You open a bill up like that one that you're talking about, and nobody came and talked to you. Nobody sent you a letter. Nobody called you up on the phone. And the bill's 150 pages thick. And it deals with technical things that in your lifetime, if you took to read it, you never would really understand. But in this room, there would be the experience, the knowledge to help me understand those issues. I may not agree with your conclusions, but at least you make me a better informed voter on your behalf when I'm down there. So this is where that type of dialogue is very important.
I'd like to revise my challenge. You need to adopt a freshman and a Senate president.
On 990 issues, you do.
Mrs. Snodgrass, my name is Ron Massey, and I'm a relatively new member of the City Club, and I'm kind of embarrassed because I kind of have this feeling like maybe you need to be a member for a long time before you stand up to the microphone, so you will all forgive me.
No.
But Mrs. Snodgrass, the reason I wanted to ask you this question is I have two little boys that are in 1st and 4th grade here in the Portland School District, and incidentally, I graduated from Barlow High School, so I know your neighborhood real well.
Good.
But having said that, it's obvious that kids today are not getting the same level of education that they had when I was going to school here in the Portland metro area. And the concern that I have is that at a time when people all acknowledge that the school funding situation is not good, could you explain to me, and no one ever accused me of being the sharpest tool in the shed, but could you explain to me why the legislature is screwing around with public dollars for charter schools?
Because they're public school. That's why. And it's not screwing around with it at all.
Well,
it's giving more opportunities to you to choose whether you want your child to go to your neighborhood school or to a school that might benefit a particular need that your child has, or to a teacher within that public school system that feels thwarted or suppressed and not be able to teach more science because they have to teach so many other subjects during the day. Or to you as a community member who has an expertise that would like to give into a public school arena. And so, because the public school, the way it's set up right now, doesn't allow for that opportunity, a charter school might. Charter school, the way that it's written right now, is a contract with the local school district. The local school district still has the up or the down on it, the way that it's written right now. So you as a school board member could say yes or no to the charter school, and the contract will have to be complete, or the charter school goes away. Let me tell you it sounds like you look like you have a follow-up question, so I'll get to it. But let me tell you about a group of parents that have come to me to deal with their student. This group of parents came to me about a month and a half ago that have special needs children. They are embarrassed that their special needs child in their family costs the school district more money than other students, is disruptive in the classroom, and they have found a program in Washington that they would like to bring down here that is measurable and has success. They want a charter school for those kids. Well, they can't do it under the situation that we're in right now with our public schools, with the arena that we have right now. But a public school, charter school, it would work for them. So they've come to me with that. I think it's a wonderful idea. That's just one example, though. Did you have a follow-up?
Well, no, I guess the only thing I would say, and I know, again, I'm not supposed to talk too long here, but I will just say the one thing, and that is, I do donate time every week at my school, and I see classrooms where they don't have paper. They'll put requests out for the parents to bring paper to school, and you think, oh, that's an anecdotal exaggeration. It's not. And I don't understand why taking public dollars to start a whole new classification of schools is going to help out schools in general, because you know what? I think my kids are entitled to the same level of education that I got.
If I could maybe address that too, should have been with me last week when the Warm Spring Indians came. And the Warm Spring Indians, you think of casinos and rich Native Americans. These weren't the rich Native Americans that I thought about. These were Warm Spring Indians that are struggling to get by. And guess what? Nobody's going to teach them their native language on the schools that they go to. Nobody's going to share with them the oral histories that I had a chance to hear about that we don't read about in our textbooks. Now you tell me why a charter school should not be available to these people in those circumstances, or the people in Powell Butte, or the people in Gold Beach, or the people in Powers, Oregon, when they have special needs. Not everybody lives in a metropolitan area. Not everybody has a job. Not everybody has a child that's going to be brought up as a Caucasian with two parents. If we don't have flexibility, if we aren't willing to take risks, then we're not what Oregon is about. And that's what charter schools are attempting to do. We may argue about how you do it in charter schools, and I don't take away that there are differences of opinion about the funding issue. Sure, we got to protect the schools. But that shouldn't be the barrier. That should be part of the challenge that we have to solve it. And that's what this debate is really about.
Good afternoon. I'm Diane Lynn, City Club member and newly elected member of the Board of County Commissioners here in Multnomah County. We welcome you very much to Multnomah County. And I'm also a Portland State University graduate, too.
Congratulations for that, too.
I think we're on a roll today with elected officials. I, too, will address public school funding here in Portland. And my daughter, Tess, is with me today. She's a 5th grader at Llewellyn here in Portland. They have a teacher planning day today. It's the end of the term, so she's here with me today. And I wanted her to meet you, and I'm very encouraged to have her hear what you said today, because what you're telling us is you're hearing us, that we understand that accountability and the managing of money here in this school system is critically important. I've been a part of a audit committee to review the KPMG audit that was done, and it's an incredible citizen effort to really look at how we could better use the money that we do have and use the money more effectively. And that you mentioned, Speaker, that we are looking at how to use our facilities more effectively, and the school district is opening up wide open to new concepts about how to use them much more effectively. The City of Portland, Multnomah County are really going to step up and work in partnership, we hope, with the school district to do things entirely different than we have been doing in the past. So my question to you is, sorry,
that must be a signal.
is if we're able to show you under no uncertain terms that we really are willing to be very, very aggressive about this, can we hope for a much more aggressive budget amount than what the governor was able to offer us in his budget?
Well, we already proposed more money than the governor to begin with, but it's not 5.3 billion, which was what we read about a week ago, last weekend. We're working towards that solution. You will find an aggressive solution from us. But as many people as there are here, there's that many different opinions of what aggressive is and what the dollar amount should be. What our hope is and what our goal is that we can use innovation and opportunity and accountability as well as responsible funding. It's not just responsible funding. It's a handful of ways to get the job done.
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about that, because that's a tough task. I'm a banker, but I would hate to have to balance my budget with the consequences of balancing a state budget, and you all understand that and know that at the county level too. You have to make some really tough choices. Let me tell you what the environment is this time. We've got a lot of money. We've got $10.6 billion on state income taxes that we're going to spend. So it's not that there isn't a pretty good pool of funds. But I can't tell you how many times during the day I have people come knocking on my door and telling me about why they need those funds for their particular program or their particular service. And those are good stories they tell. I mean, these are not people who are coming asking for blue sky types of things. These are people who are coming on behalf of senior citizens, on behalf of Children for Health Care yesterday. I mean, any one of a number of issues. The toughest task I have is having to make that yes-no decision when it comes to those budgets. And I'm committed to education, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't provide and leave the door open for the opportunity. But for example, if you want $5.3 billion, come tell me where we find it within a $10.6 billion budget without impacting seniors, without impacting children's health care, without impacting so many things that Oregon does. Or have the honesty to tell me that what you really think we need to do is to raise taxes and bring me the tax proposal. So I guess the dialogue, we need to have that. There's no question. And I will be as committed as much as the speaker or any of our colleagues to do what is right for education. But I have to do what is right for Oregon. And that includes education, but it includes those other issues too.
Thank you. The other issue, Diane, the other issue, and I asked this question over and over again last session. So if you need 5.3 or you're suggesting 5.3 this year, how much do you need in 2 more years? And that's a plan. Show me, I'm a business person. You know, show me the plan. Show me what you're projecting for 5 years or for 10 years in the direction that you're going. It's a very difficult scenario, and I don't want to lock some future legislatures into an unfundable situation where they have to totally eliminate programs, not cut them back, but totally eliminate the senior programs or the health care programs or whatever. So planning ahead is also our responsibility. Whether or not we're there or not, we have to help plan ahead for future legislative bodies.
Thanks.
And good luck with your job.
And if you get secret things you find in balancing the budget for the county, let me know.
Thank you for being here and your comments today. I appreciate it very much. I'm from a small town, landed here in 1959 in Portland. My name is Pat Craven. I'm a City Club member. I mentioned this problem to Vera Katz last week and you today, and I think I'll hit Burton next week. But the problem is density in the larger cities of Oregon, whether it's Medford, Eugene, Salem, Bend, Portland. Portland, bad. The demands on the government, like crime, congestion, traffic, conflicts, demands for social services, you name it, light rail expenditures to try to solve the problem in Portland. Want to know what the state is doing, legislators, governor, Department of Economic Development, in cooperating with county leaders, city leaders, and Vera Katz said she's extending herself into the other parts of Oregon. What is being done to look at the idea of spreading incoming industry to other cities and towns in the state of Oregon and go ahead and spend the infrastructure money in those areas, and let's ease up in Portland and other cities. Thank you.
2 key points. In fact, the very first question that we had with the fiber optic, Senate Bill 142 and 143, that's a perfect opportunity to give businesses that are coming into the Portland area, coming into Oregon, other choices for where else to go. I don't want economics to go away from Portland, don't get me wrong, but we do need to spread them out, Pat, as you suggested. And with that circle fiber optic opportunity, people may land in Lakeview, they may land in Klamath Falls, they may land in La Grande, other parts of Oregon, and appreciate the beauty from there. But the second one, and I'm going to take Brady's punch away from there, is the prison siting. I mean, how can prison siting have anything to do with what we're talking about? It has everything to do with it. The prison in Wilsonville is going to take away housing. It's going to increase the bulge, if you will, of the need. And we have a community in Oregon that wants the prison, that needs the prison. It's economic development for that prison. Now, is prison an economic development industry? Yes, unfortunately, it is. There are states in the United States where cities actually bargain and they fight over who gets the next prison because of the development around it. Those are two issues right now that the legislature is dealing with. And unfortunately, I think we know where one of those issues, what would happen to it if it goes to the governor. But those are the kinds of things that we need to be open to, the economic development opportunities. We shouldn't close the door on any of those.
Let me address, if I can, because this comes real close to home. It's tough in some of the small communities. I mean, when you talk about two Oregons, most of that's economic. Because if you live in Cave Junction or Rouge or Applegate or any one of the communities that White City, any one of the communities, how many people here associate timber with Grants Pass? Well, lower your hands, because there's only one mill left. Shut the Spalding mill down that had been in operation for 60 years this summer. That was tough on the Spalding family. It was disaster for the 150 families that worked at that mill. So we've got to spread this out. Let me tell you some things that we could do. We got to get better at retaining our essential industries as well as attracting new industries. Things like the Agricultural Experimental Center, Forestry Research Center. Those are things where we haven't been spending a lot of dough in. We ought to spend more money into that and help people in the timber industry, the agriculture industry that's left to do better with the research that they can provide. If we don't do that, then you're never going to solve your transportation problems. You're never going to solve your environmental problems, because there will be just simply too many people to be able to do it. And you can't tax yourself fast enough in order to take care of that. We got to get people in all of Oregon to be able to have that economic opportunity. This legislature is going to do something about that. It's going to do something about that in the form of where we direct our economic development dollars. I think you ought to measure three things. Measure the per capita income, measure the poverty rate, and measure the unemployment rate. And it'll give you a pretty darn good idea where you ought to spend that money. Some of that money will come right back here in Portland, because you got some of those same types of things in subsections and neighborhoods right here in your own backyard. But that will, in my area, encompass not just communities, but in some cases, whole county.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Andy Linehan, City Club member. I've been really impressed today by the talk about focus and unity, particularly focus on some priorities which matter to a lot of people here, such as education. About 2 weeks or so ago, Kevin Mannix and Bill Witt introduced 3 measures which will have the effect of overturning a recent Court of Appeals decision which found that the Oregon Constitution protects people's employment and other basic rights from discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. What do you think, to what degree do you think we're going to become mired in a revival of the culture wars, which turned out to be such a distraction 2 or 3 years ago? And will we be able to maintain this focus on the important priorities that you discussed today?
Excuse me, while you're thinking of your answers, I just want to say we've got some questioners still up there. What we'd like to do is continue beyond 1:15 to handle these questions for another 5 or 10 minutes, but for those of you that need to leave at 1:15, please feel free to do so. Just try to be quiet while you're doing that.
I don't want to get into the culture war, the hate mode that we were in not too long ago, but philosophically I strongly believe in some of the issues that you're talking about. But let me tell you what I think is going to happen in that regard. There are 90 members of the House and the Senate in total, and every one of them represents thousands of people. And they're going to continue this session, next session, the session after that, the session after that, to bring bills forward from people that they represent. So we will not stop seeing those kinds of issues. There are many people who were business-minded people, business owners, that came forward to the legislature representatives and said, what are we going to do with the Tanner decision? How does that affect us as a business person? They weren't talking about the moral aspect of it. They were talking about the business aspect. So in regards to the 3 issues that you're talking about, that was those 2 individuals' approach of how to deal with that particular court decision. We don't know what that court decision is going to do yet. It's still shuffling through. It's like flour. It's still sifting through. We don't know what the ramifications are. Will this legislative body at least discuss that issue? Absolutely. It's a very big decision and a very big issue to a lot of people in the communities. What will come out of the House and the Senate, I can't tell you that right now. We're 3 weeks into it. We're not going to be dealing with those kinds of issues up front. We've got other things we need to take care of, and that's what we'll learn to do. But it will be a conversation at some point in time.